Hilchos Nezirus Perek Chi, the laws of the Nazir, chapter 9. Let's remember from yesterday that when the Nazir finishes his term, he needs to bring 3 karbanot, 3 sacrifices. Keves, a lamb he brings as a olah, as a burnt offering. Kivsa, a female sheep he brings as a chatat, a sin offering. And a ram, an ayil, he brings as a shlamim, as a peace offering. So today we're going to be dealing with the question, what happens if you put away money for the sacrifices, but for whatever reason, there's extra money, or the person passed away, so the money is not needed anymore. So the question is going to be, in a variety of cases, what do you do with money put away for sacrifices of a Nazir when the money is not being used? That's the main issue, and at the end of the chapter, it's going to go into another specific case of 2 Nazirim who are in doubt about their status of being pure and how they bring their sacrifices together. So the Rambam begins, Halacha Aleph. Hamafrish mois sheyakriv mehem karbanos nazirim. There's a rich guy. He's not a Nazir himself, but he sees there's a lot of Nazirim that are poor people, and they need money to bring the sacrifices. So he puts aside a whole bunch of money, specifically so that Nazirs could bring their sacrifices. V'hikriv mehen v'hoisiru. And he indeed sponsored some Nazir sacrifices, and now there's leftover money. So what do? Yaviu b'maisaron karbanos nazirim acherim. Whatever leftover money you have, you use them for other Nazir sacrifices. So like over here, you have a whole bunch of people lining up. They're going to use his money that he put away specifically for Nazir sacrifices. Shemaisar nazirim li-nazirim. Because the rule is whenever you have extra funds that are dedicated for Nazirites, they go to other Nazirites. Hifrish mois stumin li-naziru soi v'hoisiru. But if it wasn't a rich guy who's putting away money for other people, instead it's his own guy. He has a Nazir vow, and he puts away money for his sacrifices. And here they're stumin. Stumin means they're undefined. So unlike in this picture where you see each coin has a specific animal, this one is shlamim, this one is chatas, this one is oila, this person just put away a bunch of money without saying what it's for. And then he finds out that he has extra money. Yiplu hamaisres l'nedava. So here, the leftover money cannot go to sponsor another Nazir, because when you put away money specifically for one Nazir, it can't be used for anybody else. In the first case, you put it away for Nazirim. So once you have extra, go to another Nazir. Here it's for yourself. The leftover just goes to Nedava. Nedava means donations. There was a special box in the Beis HaMikdash where they had extra money from sacrifices that would just bring different burnt offerings throughout the day just to keep the Mizbeach busy. Halacha Beis, hamafrish mois mefurashin li-nazirusai. What if a person separates specified monies for his Nazir sacrifices, v'haisiru, and there's extra. So he put away a coin for the shlamim. He put away a coin for the chatas. He put away a coin for the oila. It turns out the animals were cheaper than what he thought, and he has leftover. So here, because you specified which coins go for which sacrifices, there's special laws what to do with the leftover money. Whatever is left over from the money to buy the burnt offering needs to be used to buy another burnt offering. Whatever is left over from the sin offering should be brought to the Dead Sea, because sin offering has a special rule that you cannot have any benefit from it. So whatever extra money you have goes to the Yam HaMelech, where nobody can benefit from it. And the leftover money that went for the peace offering should be used to buy another peace offering. But because it came from the peace offering of a Nazir, so like we say every morning before Shacharis begins, there's a difference between a regular shlamim, a regular peace offering, and a Nazir's peace offering. A Nazir's peace offering is only eaten for 1 day, regular shlamim for 2 days. A Nazir's peace offering needs to have bread brought with it. A regular peace offering doesn't. Over here, we're going to go on both sides. This extra money that you had left over, that you're buying another shlamim that came from a Nazir's shlamim, it doesn't have to have bread, but it can only be eaten for 1 day. So that's for somebody who separates money and there's leftover. A similar scenario happens. Somebody puts aside money for his sacrifices of being a Nazir, and then he dies. So if the money was undefined, not like in this picture, he just put aside a bunch of coins, and it's not clear which coin is for which sacrifice. So all the money just goes to voluntary offerings. Hayu mefurashin, if they were already clarified, he put aside the one for the oila, the one for the chatas, the one for the shlamim. So then, like we said in the last halacha, dmei oila yavayu oila, follow the same procedure. The money that was put away for the burnt offering should come as a burnt offering. Dmei chatas yelchu liyam melech, the money for the sin offering should go to the Dead Sea. Dmei shlamim yavayu shlamim, the money for the peace offering should be brought as a peace offering with the same limitations. V'ne'achalin liyam echad ve'ein to'onin lechem, they can be only eaten for one day, but they don't have to have bread. Keitzad heim hamois hastumin, what's considered to be undefined money? Says the Rambam, he set aside a bunch of money to bring sacrifices from them, and they didn't say anything, no words at all. But if you would separate a bunch of coins and say, this is for my obligation, even though he didn't specify, but he did say it's for my obligatory offerings, at that point they assume the status of money that's been clearly set aside for each sacrifice. Needless to say, if you said the words, these money are going to be used for my burnt offering, for my sin offering, for my peace offering, even though he didn't say which money is for which offering, but he said the names of all three, so of course at this point, they're like explicitly set aside monies. Halacha hey, if somebody sets aside an animal that cannot be brought as a sacrifice, an animal that has a blemish, this animal is considered like undefined money. It's like cash, but it's like cash that's not been clearly designated. Or if somebody puts aside a block, a slab of gold or silver, a kli or a utensil, even if he says the word this slab or this utensil is going to be for my sacrifices, for my sin offering, my burnt offering, my peace offering, it has the halachic status of undefined money because it's not like cash, it has to be sold, and therefore it's not clearly defined. Halacha vav. Ha'omer elu lechatasi v'hashar lenezirusi. So instead of setting aside all the coins, each one for a specific purpose, he only sets aside this one in the middle, the chatas one. He says, this one is going for my sin offering. The rest of the coins are going to go for my nazir obligation. Vames, and then he dies. Or it was a woman who made such a vow, and then her husband nullifies the vow, in which case, no longer does she have to bring the sacrifices, but she has money set aside for a chatas, and the rest is undefined. So since the chatas was clearly designated, Dmei chatas yelchu liyam melech, the money for the sin offering goes to the Dead Sea. The hashar, and the rest, which was going to become a burnt offering and a peace offering, yavayu b'chetzion oilo v'chetzion shlamim. So you use half of them to bring a burnt offering, half of them to bring a peace offering. Halacha zayin, another similar scenario. Amar, if the person would have said, elu le'oilasi v'hashar le'nezirusi. So he only separated this coin. This coin, he says, is going for my burnt offering. The rest is for my nazir obligation. So, since you specified the burnt offering, the money that was specified for the burnt offering has to come as an actual burnt offering. The hashar and the rest, yiplu linadava, you give it to the voluntary offerings box. Since the chatos wasn't designated, you don't have to put it in the Dead Sea. It can all come as a voluntary offering. Halacha ches, misha dima shehu chayav bin Nezirus v'hiflish karbanaisav. A person imagined, he thought that for whatever reason he has to keep a nazir vow, and he even separated sacrifices for it. Then he goes and asks a rabbi, and the rabbi tells him, actually, you know what, your vow wasn't a vow, you're not even obligated to be a nazir. What should he do with the sacrifices that he separated? Says the Rambam, they don't have any holiness whatsoever. Yetzu v'yiru ba'eder. They can go back and start grazing in the herd. They're regular animals. Shazeh hekdesh tos. This is considered to be a consecration that was made by mistake. She'ene hekdesh k'meishi yisbar b'mekayme, which as we're going to explain in the next set of laws, is not considered to be a consecration. Halacha tes ha'isha shenadra b'nazir. Similar case, a woman makes a vow to be a nazir. She even puts away sacrifices. And after she puts away the sacrifices, her husband nullifies the vow, which means that the vow is not happening anymore. No sacrifice need to be brought. So what do you do with the animals? If the animal belonged to the husband, it simply goes out and grazes in the herd with the flock. We have a basic core principle. A person cannot consecrate what doesn't belong to him or her. So the woman can't take her husband's animal and make it holy. Once the husband undoes the vow, the holiness is also undone. But if the sacrifices belong to the woman and the husband has no part in them, for example, somebody gave them to her as a gift and said, I'm giving it to you specifically with the condition that your husband will have no authority to do whatever he wants. You can do whatever you want. So now it's hers, not the husband's. So even though the husband nullified the vow, but before he nullified the vow, the sacrifices were already designated. And therefore, what do? Hachatos tamus. The sin offering has to die. You leave it to die. Anytime, typically, you don't end up bringing the sin offering, it's left to die. The ha'olah tikrav olah. The burnt offering, brought as a burnt offering. The hashlamim yikrivu shlamim. The peace offering should be brought as a peace offering. But the same rules apply. You eat it for one day like a nazir peace offering, but it doesn't require bread like a regular peace offering. Halacha yud hifrisha moi stumin lekarbaneseha. If the woman hadn't put away animals, just put away money, undefined money for her sacrifices, yiplo linadava, like any other case, undefined money, it all goes to voluntary offerings. Hayu mifurashin, if they were already designated. So similar scenario to this one, but instead of dying, the woman had separated money and her husband nullified the vow. So we follow the same rules. The money put away for the sin offering goes to the Dead Sea. The burnt offering goes to a burnt offering. The money for the peace offering goes to the peace offering with the same limitations. Eaten for only one day and do not need bread. A woman makes a vow to become a nazir and she becomes impure during her days of her term, which usually would require a shaving of impurity and a sacrifice of impurity. After she becomes impure, her husband hears about the vow and nullifies the vow. So even though usually we say that when a husband nullifies a vow, it's like he uproots it, he takes it away completely. The woman still has to bring a sacrifice of impurity. Why? Because there's a big difference between how a husband nullifies and how a rabbi nullifies. When a rabbi nullifies a vow, he takes it away retroactively. When a husband nullifies the vow, yes, he uproots it, takes it away completely, but only from here on out. And therefore, since she became impure before he nullified the vow, she has to bring a sacrifice of impurity. Halacha Yud Beis ha'ish shehider es benoi benazir. A father, for whatever reason, decided he's going to make his son into a nazir. He doesn't want to be a nazir. Yes, he can. He wants his son to be a nazir. Now, as we learned, and he's going to bring it up again over here, it's only if the son agrees and doesn't protest. If the son protests, or even if his relatives protest, let's say the kid was a boy, his uncle comes to protect him, and specifically shaves him, let's say, to show his protest, then not. But other than that, a father has the right to make his son under a vow of a nazir. So, let's say that's what happened. A father puts his son under a vow of becoming a nazir. And he even puts away sacrifices for him. So here I put money, but let's say he actually puts animals. He puts animals aside. And then, the son doesn't want this vow, or he or his relatives protest the vow, or he or his relatives purposely shave his head to show that they don't want this vow. So it's basically like the case before where the woman put aside her animals. Hachatas tamus. The animal put aside for the sin offering needs to die. The burnt offering goes for a burnt offering, the peace offering goes for a peace offering, with the limitations of only being eaten for one day and not requiring bread. If the father had put aside for the son, not animals, but money, and it was undefined, same thing, goes to the donation, voluntary offerings. As in the case on the slide, there was coins for each sacrifice. So the same procedure. The sin offering money goes to the Dead Sea. The money for the burnt offering goes to the burnt offering. Very repetitive in this chapter. And the money for the burnt peace offering goes to the peace offering without bread, eaten for one day. A person says, his wife is pregnant, says, I'm going to be a nazir when I'm going to have a son. The hifrish karban, he even puts aside a sacrifice in anticipation of this vow. The hipila ishtay. Unfortunately, his wife miscarries. So that pregnancy about which he made his vow is no longer valid. And then v'chazra v'yolda. Then she becomes pregnant again, and she gives birth. So the question is if the original sacrifice, which she separated, became holy or not. Harei hakarban is suffix. Says the Rambam, these sacrifices are in a status of doubt. Va'asurin begiza uva'avoida, and therefore we treat them like a sacrifice in doubt. It's forbidden to shear the wool from an animal that's holy. It's forbidden to use that animal to work your field or whatever it is. On the other hand, you can't bring it to the temple because it might not be a sacrifice. And then what you do typically with these animals is you leave them in the field till they get a blemish. And once they get a blemish, a mum, they cannot be brought on the mizbeach, then you can transfer their holiness to other money, and then it's fine. Halacha Yudalet. From here to the end of the chapter, we're dealing with another case. Shnei Nezirim. You have two Nazirs, two people that are both a Nazir. Shanitma echad mehem ve'ein yadua mihu. One of them became impure. You don't know who it is. And the Rambam will soon explain how that could happen. How could you have two guys that one of them became impure, you're not sure who. But let's just accept the case for now as it is. One of them is impure, one of them is not. Keitzad mevi'in karbanei seyan. How do they bring their sacrifices? The person who became impure has to bring what's called karbanot tum'ah, sacrifices of impurity, which is 2 birds and a lamb. The person who's still pure has to bring different sacrifices, 3 animals, one a oila, one a chatas, one a shlamim. But each one may or may not be impure, and you can't just bring a sacrifice out of doubt. So what do? Mevi'in karban tuma the karban tara bimlois yemei nezirusam. So first of all, you wait till they concluded their time. You wait till the end. Treat them both as pure. So if they both made a vow for 30 days, you wait till the end of 30 days. If one is longer than the other, you have to wait till the latest date. You wait till the latest date, and then you bring one set of impure sacrifices, one set of pure ones. They share the money. They pay for it equally. And then, v'oimer echad mehem, one of them says, look, let's make a condition either way. Im anihu hatamei, if I was the one who was impure, karban tuma shali v'karban tara shalcha, let these ones, the impure sacrifices, be mine, and the pure sacrifices will be yours. V'im anihu atar, if I was the one who was pure, karban tara shali v'karban tuma shalcha. So this one is going to be mine, this one's going to be yours, because you're the impure one. Very good. They bring those sacrifices. So now, the person who was impure is definitely taken care of, and the person who was pure is definitely taken care of. However, the person who was impure still needs to bring the purity sacrifices after his Nezirus is finished. So therefore, after they bring this set of sacrifices, they wait another term of the entire Nezirus, because the guy who was impure loses his count, he has to reset his count. Since we don't know who it is, they have to both count the full term.
If one of them is for a month and the other one for 10 years?
Yes, you got to go with the later one, the 10-year one, yes.
Yo.
And then, after that term is done, now they only have to bring one set of pure sacrifices, only this one, because now nobody is impure anymore, of course, just the 3 animals. And the one guy says, if I was the one originally who was impure, so then in the first scenario, karban tuma shali v'karban tara shalcha, the impure sacrifices belong to me, the pure sacrifices belong to you, and therefore the sacrifices we're bringing today, v'zeh karban tahara si. This is the sacrifices for my purity, because now I'm finally done with. But if I was the one who was pure way back when, then karban tara shali v'karban tuma shalcha. The sacrifice of purity that we brought back then was mine. Sacrifices of impurity back then was yours. V'zeh karban tara scha. And this 3 sacrifices is now your sacrifice of purity. Nimtzu shalai hifsidu b'karban neseyan klum. So it turns out they didn't lose anything in their sacrifices. In other words, they actually did, because they had to pay half. They had to pay half of the new set. But if they would do it separately, they would each have to bring their own 2 sets. So at least they don't lose that much. Now, this is all if Hashem helped and both of them stayed alive. What if meis echad mehem? What if one of them died? So, again, 2 Nazirs. One of them became impure, we don't know who it is, and this guy dies. So now he's the only one left to bring his sacrifices, and he needs to assume that maybe he was impure. But here, because he doesn't know for sure if he was impure, he cannot bring the full set of impurity sacrifices. So the Rambam says you only bring the minimum. You bring first a bird for a sin offering, and an animal for a burnt offering. Why these two? So whenever you bring a sin offering out of doubt, you cannot bring an animal. If you bring a bird, there's a special halacha that says that you can bring a bird out of doubt and then bury it. And then either way, if it was supposed to be brought, then good. If it wasn't supposed to be brought, also good, it's been buried. So this bird animal serves the place of the impure sacrifices. That's the only one which is super important. And for the pure sacrifices, you'll just bring an oila, so that at least one animal you can say you brought. V'yoymar, and you'll say like this: Im tamei hayisi, if I was impure, hachatas mechayvasi v'ha'oila nedava. So the sin offering, the bird, is part of my obligatory set of impure sacrifices, and the animal burnt offering is a donation. V'im toyer hayisi, if I was really pure, ha'oila mechayvasi v'hachatas ha'if safik. So I'm bringing this one as part of my 3 animals that I have to bring. It's my obligation. And I'm just putting in the bird sin offering as a doubt. Don't worry about it, we're going to bury it. That then takes care of, technically speaking, your impurity. The Sefer Yemei Nezirus Shacharis, you count another round of the term of Nezirus, so maybe Karban Tara, and this time you're for sure pure. So you bring a full set of 3 pure sacrifices, the Oila, the Chatas, and the Shlamim. V'aymer, and you say, Im tamei hayisi, if I was impure, ha'oila harishayna nedava v'zu chayva. So back then when I brought this animal, it was just a donation, because I really needed to bring the impure sacrifices, which was covered by this bird. And whatever I'm bringing now is my obligation, as a pure Nazir now. V'im toyer hayisi, if I was pure back then, so I already covered one of the animals for my pure sacrifices. Ha'oila harishayna chayva. The first burnt offering which I brought was my obligation. Vizu nidava. This oila, this one here, is only a donation because I already brought it over here. The hashar, vizeh hashar karbani, and these 2 are the rest of my sacrifices, the sin offering and the peace offering. And that's it. That takes care of all the scenarios. Now the Rambam summarizes, ve'ein echad mishnei megaleach tiglachas tuma. Even though in both of these cases, many sacrifices have to be brought, but nobody should shave their head. Usually when you become impure, you have to shave your head also, tiglachas tuma. Here, nobody does that. Why? The only time you can shave your head is if you're certain that you have to shave your head. If you're not certain, then you might be a Nazir shaving your head. That's not allowed. If they were, and also there's another issue, cutting your payas. You cannot cut your sideburns unless you have a commandment to do so from the Torah. So therefore, if they were children or women, they have no problem to cut their head, shave their head. But a grown man, they cannot just cut off the hair around their side locks, the payas, out of a doubt. If you have a mitzvah to shave your head, so that overrides the avera to cut your payas. But if you don't have a mitzvah, then you cannot do the avera, and therefore while you bring the sacrifices of impurity, you don't shave your head in impurity. Now, we said before that the case was 2 Nazirim were together and they're in doubt who became impure. How does that happen? The Ketzad Yivalid Lahem Safek Zebetuma. How do they get this doubt in impurity? So we're going to see this at much more length in the Rambam's 10th book. But the rule is like this. In Halacha, there are 2 kinds of domains, what's called Rishus HaYachid and Rishus HaRabim. There's a private domain and a public domain. The Torah says, as a Halacha that we received from Moshe Rabbeinu on Mount Sinai, that if you're in a Rishus HaYachid, if you're in a private domain, and you're in doubt whether you became impure or not, you have to assume that you're impure. If you're in Rishus HaRabim, if you're in a public domain and you're in doubt whether you became impure, then you're actually pure. So it's more lenient in the public domain, more severe in the private domain. So the Rambam says, this would be the scenario. These 2 Nazirites were standing in a private domain. Where over there, when you're in doubt about impurity, you have to assume stringently that you're impure. And there was a guy peeking in to this private domain from the outside. And he said, I saw one of you guys become impure. A dead bug touched one of you, whatever it is, or a corpse touched one of you. I don't know who it is. Now that they're in doubt, they have to become both impure. But if the witness was with them in the private domain, in the courtyard, then actually they're both going to be pure. Why? Because the rule that I said before, that a doubt in a private domain is impure, is only if there's one person or 2 people. Once there's 3 people, they're considered to be a lot of people. Once you have multiple people in a private domain, even when they're in doubt, they're pure. Just like a doubt of impurity in a public domain, which is also pure. As will be explained at length in its proper place in the Rambam's 10th book. But says the Rambam, when do we say this? That we accept the testimony of one witness to put them into a status of impurity? If the 2 Nezirim were both quiet, they didn't answer back, or they were also in doubt. But if one guy says, listen, I don't know what you saw. I never became impure. Even if you have 2 witnesses going against him that he became impure, he will never bring a sacrifice as though he's an impure Nazir based on their testimony. Why? Isn't it 1 against 2? Why don't we trust the witnesses? Because when a Nazir says, I never became impure, what he really means is, or what he can treat him as if he's saying, is it's like he's saying, I don't want to bring an impure sacrifice because I may as well go to a rabbi and just nullify my vow completely. And the whole thing will be retroactively done. So therefore, I can say with certainty that I didn't become impure and I won't have to bring a sacrifice. It's as though he's not contradicting the witnesses, and a man is believed about himself. But if the Nazir was quiet or he was in doubt, he must bring a sacrifice even based on 1 witness, as we explained. Similarly, if 1 witness tells a guy, forget impurity, the whole Nazir vow, 1 guy comes over to his friend and says, you took a vow to be a Nazir in front of me. If the guy contradicts him, not liable to anything. But if it doesn't deny it, you don't deny the accusation, he needs to behave like a Nazir based on his words. Even if the witness tells 2 people, I know that 1 of you became a Nazir, I don't know who it is. If they don't contradict him, they must both behave like a Nazir based on his words. If he behaved like a Nazir based on 1 witness's testimony, and then during his term he drinks wine or becomes impure, and at that point 2 witnesses warned him against doing it as a Nazir, he'll go so far as to get lashes, even though the fundamental Nezirus vow was only substantiated by 1 witness. Doesn't matter. Now that it's been substantiated and he's behaving like a Nazir, later on, if 2 guys warn him against drinking wine or becoming impure, he gets lashes. Halacha Yudches, a final scenario. You have a dead body lying across the road. Even though there's no place on the street, either you're going to walk over him or you're going to touch him on the side. And the commentaries add, there's a little space to squeeze by. But if you're typically walking, you would for sure touch the dead body or at least make an oihel, make a roof over it. Even though it's a known impurity, everybody knows the dead guy is there. The avar sham nazir, and a nazir passes by that street. Hareze tahar, he is still pure. Hoyel v'safik b'shosarabim tahar. Since we're not sure, and again the commentaries say there's a way for him to squeeze by rarely without touching it, so it becomes a doubt of tuma in a public domain, and it's pure. However, that's only if the nazir was walking by foot. But if he was riding on a horse or carrying a load, now he's for sure impure. The only way out to become pure is to say that he squeezed by in the way that he didn't touch the dead body. But when you're on an animal, that's impossible. If you're on foot, it's possible, maybe you didn't touch the dead body, you didn't make a roof over the dead body, you didn't move the dead body. But if you're carrying a load or you're riding on an animal, it's impossible. You for sure touched the animal, the dead body, or you made a roof over it, or you moved it. Because the dead body is stretched across the width of the street. If you're walking, maybe you made it out. Other than that, you have to assume that you're impure.